Thank you for joining today's virtual educational program with Cancer Support Community Los Angeles. I am Evelyn Rodarte, and I am the Virtual Program Associate at CSCLA. I welcome you to this week's webinar titled, How to Transition to a Plant-Focused Diet. This webinar will discuss the benefits and barriers faced when transitioning to a plant-focused way of eating to help you gain confidence in implementing plant-focused strategies after a cancer diagnosis. Before we begin, if this is your first time joining us, Cancer Support Community Los Angeles is a premier nonprofit organization providing vital social and emotional support to families facing cancer, including patients, caregivers, and their loved ones, all at no cost. Our programs include support groups, healthy lifestyle classes, social activities, and educational programs such as this one. If you would like to learn more about our services or watch past webinars, please visit our website at www.cancersupportla.org. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome today's speaker. Tamar Rothenberg is a registered dietitian nutritionist who specializes in nutrition for breast cancer thrivers in her private practice in Los Angeles. She has a certificate of training in vegetarian nutrition and is an adjunct professor of nutrition at Touro College. She is the author of a newly released book titled Cancer Diet for the Newly Diagnosed. Also, all attendees this evening will be entered into a drawing to receive a copy of Tamar's latest book. Welcome, Tamar. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction, which I wrote. And thank you for inviting me back. I love working with CSCLA, so it's always a pleasure to be invited. So I did want to show you a copy of the book that you may get tonight. It's called Cancer Diet for the Newly Diagnosed, and it's a guide and a cookbook, and I wish you luck in getting it, and hope it's helpful. So let's get started. I'm just going to, of course, share my screen. And, sorry. So we are going to be talking about transitioning to a plant-focused diet. What does that mean? I know you've heard different versions of plant-based, plant-focused. So it really just means more plants. And diet just means a pattern of eating. It's not diet in the social media sense, but in the nutritional sense, it means the way you eat most of the time. So we'll be talking about nutrition, of course, and then I have a recipe demo on video to show you a plant-based, it could be a main dish or an appetizer. And then final exam. No, it's only a few questions, don't worry, just to see if the information was accessible to you. And then, of course, I'll have time for Q&A. There's always lots of good questions, and I appreciate all your questions. The reason I focus on nutrition and a recipe is because I believe cooking is a health behavior. It's one of our health behaviors. And it doesn't always mean a gourmet meal. It could mean baking a baked potato, maybe a side of chili. It doesn't have to be overdone and take too much time. So I hope from this presentation you can identify some disease-fighting benefits. You probably know a little about that already. And then I really like to bust the myths around plant-based diets, because there are many, and understand how to balance nutrients, whether you're eating more plants or going all plant-based. And of course, I will arm you with some tips for practical tips for adopting a plant-based lifestyle if you choose. And I really like this quote from Jack Rutherford. He was an anthropologist. And this holds true today, even in this high-tech age. The low-tech plant continues to be the key to nutrition and health. Isn't that true? Okay, I'm going to start with this quote, which I love also, from Isaac Bashevis Singer. He was a writer, literary writer who won the Pulitzer Prize, and he was a vegetarian. And he said, "I did not become a vegetarian for my health. I did it for the health of the chickens," which I think is a really great way to look at things. So before we go further, I want to know if you could put in the Q&A, what does plant-focused eating mean to you personally? Does it mean you have to go vegan? Does it mean you have to eat all raw food? What is your kind of observation of what plant-focused eating means to you? Does it seem too difficult? Does it mean you can have certain things and not others, being a little more flexible? So I'd appreciate, as I go on, what some of the... Okay, good. I have one, getting most of your nutrition from plants. I love that. That's a great definition. Reducing the percentage of meat included in regular meals. Terrific. Hi, Kim. Eating more vegetables. Does it mean to intentionally add more veggies and fruits to your eating patterns? Yes, we'll go over that. That's a great question. So these are all great definitions. Okay, let me just close this. It won't close the chat. Okay. Sorry, the chat is covering my slide. Oh, there we go. All right, so what is a plant-focused diet? Let's look at some of the different definitions. And you'd be surprised that there's many ways to go more plant-based. So the trend now, if you look on the bottom, is called the flexitarian way of eating, and that means really everything just occasionally. So red meat, fish, eggs, and dairy, maybe you'll keep them from a special event, holiday, birthday, things like that. Pesco means fish, so they agree to eat fish and eggs and dairy, but no red meat and poultry. That's another popular one, so you don't really feel deprived. And then lacto-ovo. So a lacto is like lactose, it means dairy, and ovo means egg. So no red meat, no fish, but they'll eat eggs and dairy. And then ovo is they will eat just eggs, but not the rest. And as you see, it gets more restrictive as we go up. So lacto-vegetarian is no dairy. I mean, yes to dairy, but no animal foods, other animal foods. And then vegan is not having any benefit from animals. So those are the different definitions. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. They actually all have a place in your lifestyle. But what do the experts say? Who says that you should primarily eat plant foods after a cancer diagnosis? So, you know, it's very hard to agree in the nutrition world on anything, but everybody agrees on nutrition and physical activity. Those are two kind of things that we all agree on. So the American Institute for Cancer Research, the American Cancer Society, World Cancer Research Fund, which is a global research organization, the vegetarian and oncology dietetic groups, of which I'm a part of, that's from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and many, many oncologists, breast surgeons, and dietitians. So we all agree eat more plants, and I think the challenge is how do we do that? So I want to go into first, a lot of people think it's all or nothing, right? And the Vegan Society, which originated many years ago, the vegan way of eating, I think you'd be surprised to know that it's not the way it's depicted in social media or in, print articles and things like that. That it was originally supposed to be, it is a lifestyle, but it's not just about the food. So veganism is a philosophy and way of living which seeks to exclude, and I put this in red, as far as is possible and practical. It doesn't mean you must or you have to. It just means if it fits, if you can, if it's doable for you. So it wasn't meant to be this restrictive way of living that I think many people envision veganism as. So it's as far as possible to remove all forms of exploitation of, cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. So I want to define that so you know that a lot of what you're seeing, whether it's the raw vegan diet or things like that, are really not practical for most people, and it was not meant to be this way. I just want to check the chat. Okay, so again, what do the experts say? This is from Harvard School of Public Health, and this is an example of a healthy eating plate. It's just an example. It's the ideal way. We all can't eat like this every meal, but it's something to strive for. And what you see, the proportions are all in a balance. This includes everything you need for all your nutrient needs, whether it's carbs, fats, protein, or vegetables, fruits, healthy protein, and whole grains. So starting from water, limiting, juices and sugar-sweetened beverages, a variety of whole grains, and then choosing for a protein, fish, poultry, beans, and nuts. Now, it's important to limit red meat and cheeses, avoid bacon, cold cuts, and other processed meats. And I want to point out that that is exactly in line with what we advise cancer survivors, or as a way to reduce a risk of cancer. So this all aligns pretty nicely. And then on the left, using healthy oils like olive for cooking, limiting, your saturated fat. Those are the fats that are solid at room temperature, like butter. And of course, the more veggies, the better. More color on your plate. The one thing I don't agree with, it says potatoes don't count. They actually do count. I think they're just afraid people eat them only in French fries form, like most teenagers do. But potatoes are incredibly nutritious and very accessible, which is why I like them. And then eat plenty of fruits of all colors. So how does this look to you? It looks like a nice plate, doesn't it? Okay, so in order to really take on the way of plant-focused eating, you have to have a why. Otherwise, it's very hard to stick to or understand, long-term why you should be doing it. And it really just can't be for health. It doesn't seem to hold enough for people to continue on. So I want you to think about what's your why. Maybe it's sustainability, our global environment. Maybe it's environmental, that we care for. In California now, we have, water issues. Maybe it's ethical, for animal rights, or even labor rights. Maybe it's taste changes. A lot of people after or during and after chemo are not so attracted to meat. I don't know if this happened to you. And also we're finding this with COVID, that this is very common now. It's actually very similar. And then, or animal care, maybe you care about factory farming, and of course health, or you're already vegan or vegetarian. So if you care to share or just think about it, what would be your reason for adding more plants in and making that extra effort to do that? So if we take as an example the impact on the environment, that is a reality for many people that we're seeing more and more, that maybe their reasoning, for example, meat takes up, of all foods, it takes up the most resources. So I do want to show you, this is a lovely, it's called the Principles Menu for Change. And you don't have to look on the left. That's more for chefs and people in, the food production business. But this, on the right, you'll see this menu was developed by chefs and environmental scientists to actually align with both environmental concerns and health concerns. And again, it really fits very nicely with our recommendations for cancer survivors. So if you remember that Harvard plate, this is exactly what this says in a nice graphic as well. Make whole intact grains the new norm. Legumes are a type of bean, and nuts, so make that the star of your plate. More kinds of seafood. Go good fat, not low fat. And then in moderation, sugar, eggs, red meat less often, reduce your salt and sugary beverages, and drink healthy. So that really is a nice thing to see that they've put this together. Sorry. Okay, so now I want to bust some myths for you. See if this is one of your myths, or leave for the Q&A if you have more questions about some myths you've heard. But these are the top 5 top ones that I often get asked about. And they all have to do with is it enough to eat just plants? So the number one I get is protein. Where's the protein? We're not getting enough protein. So of course it's not true, but you do have to think more about what you're eating, the balance of your eating, and that may be a good thing, but it does take a little more effort. It's not hard to get more protein. So of course beans are your top source. Even meat alternatives, it maybe rely more on fortified plant-based milks. They all have, like soy milk has the same amount of protein as milk, dairy milk. There used to be a myth that you had to combine certain foods like grains and, a bean, but that's not true. If you just eat enough during the day, then you can meet all your needs for the amino acids, which are the building blocks of life. So non-animal product protein includes quinoa as a great source, even small things like mushrooms, chickpeas, lentils, artichokes, everything you see here, collards, these are all good ways to get your protein. But, if you need 2-3 servings a day, some people don't like all those beans. So you can go for a smaller bean like lentils, and then you get all the protein, and it's not as hard to digest as some of the other beans. And of course, there are ways around to cook the beans, so you don't have any digestive issues from that. But, I wouldn't worry about getting protein if your meals are structured appropriately. And then this one is you need calcium from milk. So the truth is you do need calcium. You don't have to get it from milk. So past the age of 2, actually humans do not need milk. And that's why, in essence, many of us are lactose intolerant, because you just don't need it after that. So you can get calcium again from fortified foods, from again the plant-based milks, soy milk. You can get calcium from leafy greens like bok choy, So, if you need to take a supplement, you'll take a supplement. Just like meat eaters will probably need a calcium supplement as well. So, again, this is not a concern if your meals are balanced. Oops. Do I have a question here? Okay, so I'm just checking the questions. Is there anything I should answer while I'm doing this? So this is really interesting. This was a research conference that I attended just last month, and this was from the American Institute for Cancer Research, and they had done a very good, solid study. It was originally on women with breast cancer, and now they've expanded it to other types of cancers. And I'll tell you that what they really summarized was that small amounts of animal foods, and that's chicken or fish, not red meat or processed meats, do not detract from the health benefits of a heavily plant-focused diet for many types of cancer. Now, this is a new type of observation because all along we have been saying, maybe lean towards vegetarianism or veganism. This is showing that just small amounts of animal food does not harm and does not, spark cancer or something like that. So, the whole point of my presentation here is that there are many ways, multiple paths to eating healthy. And if you're not ready to give up chicken or fish, then you may not have to. The only cancer that they do see more so is colorectal cancer, but I'll go into that in another slide. So I hope this is a little reassuring if you're not ready to go all plant-based, that you have your choices. So another myth is that vegan diets can't meet our needs. And people point to the fact that, you have to take supplements if you're on a vegan diet. Well, most of us have to take supplements even if we're not vegans, right? Most of us do have to take either calcium or vitamin D and things like that. So again, this is a myth that needs to go away. The only thing I do highly recommend is if you are vegan, you would need to take vitamin B12 and probably omega-3s. But B12, most people over the age of 50 should be taking anyway because we don't absorb it as well. And the B12 has to do with the state of our soil. It used to be that our soil had vitamin B12 in it. Now it's just stripped of that, so we do have to take that supplement. But it's not the problem with the vegan diet. It's the problem with our environment. So again, balanced meals, you can meet your needs, and I work a lot with vegans on making sure that they get all their nutrient needs, just as I do with someone who is not a vegan. So again, there are ways around this. And then this myth is that you have to eat perfectly. I do see this a lot from cancer survivors. I understand why there's so many food fears. Did you do something to cause your cancer? You did not. There is no one food that causes cancer. But we eat on a spectrum. Okay, so it's like the spectrum is something has more benefit or something has more risk. So if you look at the spectrum and you choose your meals based on your comfort level, right? So the ultimate benefit would be, of course, all your plant foods, nuts, seeds, mushrooms, fermented foods, plant oils, And I put yogurt in parentheses because that is especially helpful for colon cancer, but may not be helpful for prostate or ovarian. There's some association. So we're getting more to the type of precision medicine where we can see certain connections between diet and the type of cancer. And then what you want to limit more is cheese. Milk is not necessary. Starchy snacks, you know, those good snacks that come in a bag. Red meat, eggs, and juices. And then on the high end of the risk, we really see processed meats. Those are highly processed, like salami and your deli meats. Refined grains, ultra processed foods. Those are foods that are kind of beyond recognition, with high fat, high salt, or high sugar, and then sugary beverages and alcohol. So does that make sense that, you know, we don't have to be perfect? We know that there's a spectrum, and we want to choose, you know, the foods that give us benefits most of the time. So this is hard to see, so I'll explain it, but it's a graph from a study that was done in June 2019, where they actually could link what they called a suboptimal diet to certain cancer types. But what's striking is not having enough of one food, not overdoing it on another food. So what I mean is that low whole grains, for example, were most associated with colorectal and the oral cancers. And then processed meats was pretty much associated with most of the cancers that we know of. Sugar sweetened beverages, some of the cancers. So we're beginning to see a pattern where, again, if we say low whole grains, that means what are we eating more of? We're eating more of refined grains, processed foods. And as of now, the American diet, you know, something like 2/3 of our diet is now ultra processed foods, which is, as I said, kind of the least healthful food, which really we should start limiting. So I just wanted to show you this. Okay, let's get into the disease-fighting power of plants, which I'm sure you know already. Sorry. So what does plants have? They have phytochemicals. Yes, these are chemicals, but they're good for us. Phyto just means plant. So again, each color has an enormous benefit, a different compound that affects different parts of our body. But they all have, most of them have antioxidants or antibacterial, they're cancer protective, and much more. So we do want to focus on these plant foods for maximum benefit. And this was also based on a study done at that conference I was at, that the eating more plant foods decreases the risk of overall and non-cancer mortality. This was specifically for breast cancer. So what does that mean? It means that they lived longer because they didn't get heart disease or other conditions that shorten our lives, and it had nothing to do with breast cancer. It just meant eating more plants led to better health. And so we can go through treatment, we're stronger, things like that. So it's important to know that there are benefits to these that override other things. Okay, I, as a dietitian, love to focus on fiber. So this is the way it works. I ate more veggies and had a great poop. Yes, that's the way it works. So fiber is the backbone of plants, and it has enormous benefit because when we digest fiber, whether it's digested fully or not, it's like cleaning your gut. It's ridding the body of things that is unwanted and should be discarded. And so we really want to focus on fiber, different kinds. It doesn't matter what kind, you don't have to think of only one kind. There are many different kinds in the different plant foods, grains, mushrooms, and it really is an important part of the plant food kingdom. And when you think about it, we always focus on meat, that it has zinc and it has iron, but what doesn't it have, right? It doesn't have fiber. So that's an important part of eating more plants. I'll just go through these quickly because you probably know a lot about this. We reduce, just like you saw on the slide about women living longer, we know that it reduces the risk of clots and strokes, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and especially prostate and colon cancer, frailty, and even we're seeing a link to depression. So our gut health is very important, and really plants are the best way to strengthen our gut, which is also our immune system. So that really is a wonderful way to include this. Did I skip one? And then brain health. So we're seeing more and more connection between brain health, even after chemo, like berries will help improve cognition. After chemo, avocado is for the wonderful fat that it offers. Onions, these are prebiotics, and they also help. Anything that helps our gut will also help our brain. So all these wonderful colors will contribute to our the effects of aging. And of course, decreasing LDL, and what does it? It's the fiber that does that. Decreasing triglycerides, and managing blood pressure. So if you're eating mostly plant foods, there's less room for other things that detract from our health. You're going to have less saturated fat. You're going to have less sodium for the most part. So all these things contribute. Okay, so let's get into some real world strategies. How do I do this? Because that's what I usually hear. I missed the slide, sorry. So number one, you want to treat any kind of animal protein as either flavoring or just on the side. So if you see on the left, this was the way most Americans used to eat. And now we are transitioning more towards, if you see a lot more color on your plate, so you want to start with a plant-based protein if you can. So for example, what do you say if someone asks you what's for dinner? You're usually going to say what? You're usually going to say chicken, I don't know, a steak, or something to do with a meat. But what if you turn it around, like I say, flip your plate and say, oh no, we're having lentil soup, we're having a chili, focus on the plants that you can include, and then on the side you have the chicken or the fish. Number two, think of your kitchen as zones and where you could add more plants. On the countertop, you're going to have easy access to things that can be left on the counterpart. In your pantry, you're going to have nuts and seeds and grains and canned beans. Canned veggies, for the most part, are just as nutritious, sometimes even more than fresh, because the vitamin C is preserved. In your refrigerator, you want things prepped and easy to find. And in your freezer, there's so many incredible options now. You could buy frozen quinoa, frozen fruit for your smoothies. There's different ways. When you go shopping, think of which zone can I put this food in. Number three is really think about veganizing your favorite dishes. So for example, if you like pasta, which I don't know who wouldn't, Use pasta as a vehicle for more veggies. So, for example, if you're making pasta, maybe you want to add some lentils and mushrooms. That turns it into a delicious bolognese. If you're making meatballs, add some grated zucchini. If you're making a chili, make it mostly beans. And if, for example, you want to try tofu, some sauteed tofu, that's a great way to do that. So just experiment. It doesn't need to be hours and hours of work. It's just, for example, let's say you were making a meatloaf. You could replace half the meat with sauteed mushrooms. And that's an easy way to reduce your meat. And these are some swaps that I find really tasty. So let's say you like that sausage taste, and that's something we really should be reducing. If you're making a stew, if you add a mixture of mushrooms and fennel seeds, it really has that flavor and texture of sausage. The next one's my favorite. This Parmesan cheese. If you use a coffee grinder and you grind walnuts and nutritional yeast, it's really delicious, and you're getting extra B vitamins. You're getting omega-3s, so a couple of walnuts a day gives you most of the omega-3s you need. And as I said, the bolognese, lentils, and walnuts, or you could use white beans. It makes it for a very hearty sauce. And then meal plan and prep your plan. So this is where I think people have the most challenges. So fruit you don't want to prep ahead of time. That'll get moldy. So you can buy frozen. You can wash your leafy greens or buy pre-rinsed. Put them in a glass container and have it within easy reach. Prep some of your veggies. Make a whole dish of whole grains like quinoa or farro or barley. And so you could just add a scoop to your meal at night whenever you want it, or to a salad. You can use canned beans, all these things. Pick your favorite recipes and make sure you have those ready to go in your pantry. So maybe it takes like 20 minutes on a weekend to sit down and decide what some of your meals are going to look like if you're going more plant-based. So this is an important one. I find people want to go all out. There's no need to do that. When you first start, maybe start with a meatless Monday. There's actually a website with great ideas for doing that. Start with one meal, or start with one day a week, like this meatless Monday, or just keep adding more veggies. It's yours to do with it what you like. I do find that starting one meal or one day is the easiest way to go, so you start getting more creative, but it's not overwhelming. So you do want to sneak in, and I don't believe in hiding veggies, especially for kids, because we want to teach them how good they are, but you want to sneak in more plants wherever you can. Maybe you can cook a sweet potato and make a topping of avocado or something on it. Make a soup. That's the best way to get in veggies. Make a hummus. Make a dessert that incorporates fruit. For snack, have walnuts and raspberries or cashews in a fruit. Maybe you'd like to have some peanuts or peanut butter. Maybe when you make a salad, you want some crunch, throw on some sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds. They're filled with zinc and magnesium. There are easy ways to just say, I'm going to add more of this and more of that. Maybe in your morning oatmeal, besides berries, add some sliced almonds. And so, just think about whenever you're starting your meal, what more can I add? Okay, so here's a recipe I picked that is really easy. It only requires a few ingredients. Basically, what you need is like 6 cups of fresh spinach because, as you know, it gets reduced to like a teaspoon. You're going to use a can of white beans. You just rinse it. And then a little bit of pine nuts if you like at the end for that crunch. Salt and pepper, a little bit of broth to cook it in. The whole thing literally takes 15-20 minutes. It could be a side dish, it could be a main dish, and you're getting some iron and some calcium and protein and zinc, something like that, just in this one dish. So let me show you what that looks like. If my video cooperates. Okay. Well, let me see if there's a question here while it's spinning its wheels. Okay, wait 1 second. Let me just... there's a question here. Are there plant-based foods to avoid? I'm trying to think if there's anything really... of course, supplements that are herbal supplements, those can be dangerous. But I can't think of a... Okay, sorry. Let me just close this. Okay, I'm going to stop this for a second. Sorry. And close it, and then I'll reopen it. Okay, I'm going to start this again. Here we go. So these are your ingredients, very simple. Watch this technique for chopping an onion. You can dance while you cook. I'm sorry. Okay, well, let me go forward. Okay. So you can use dried rosemary here. You don't have to chop fresh. And you just do a rough chop of pre-washed spinach. And if you have this tool, it's very useful for pressing garlic because now you're going to infuse the oil with this garlic and onion flavor. Okay, you just cook this for a few minutes and add your garlic and herbs. Okay, now we're cooking the spinach. We're going to add a little broth and it gets reduced. And our, of course, beans, which makes it really filling. That looks pretty good. And then you're going to add some pine nuts for crunch. That's optional, but it makes it just more flavorful. So how does that look? Does that look doable? So I want to add that this is a quote from Arthur Ashe, the famous tennis player, and he said, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. You don't have to go all out. You notice that just by adding plants, nuts, adding a few things of balanced foods, that you're well on your way to eating for maximum health benefits. I think we're going to skip this because we're getting close to the giveaway and I want to give you time for questions. So, of course, you can connect with me. I have a website. My email is nutritionnomnom. On Instagram, on Breast Cancer Nutritionist. And on Facebook, I have a business page and also a private group for thrivers. You're welcome to join for women who experience breast or ovarian cancer. So I'm just going to stop the share here. Oh, am I not sharing?
You are.
Oh, okay. Because it says new. I thought this whole time. Okay.
Thank you, Tamar. Thank you so much for that information, for the presentation. Definitely, nutrition is a journey, especially when diagnosed with cancer. So let's go ahead and start off with the giveaway. I used like a generator, so I chose someone at random. So the winner of the book is going to be Susan Gerber. So congratulations, Susan. I'll go ahead and be contacting you this week just to verify your address because we will go ahead and mail that out to you. So that's exciting.
Very exciting. Congratulations. I had nothing to do with choosing.
So. No, she did not. I can testify. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into some of these questions. Let's see. Someone asked, how much plant fat is allowed on a low-fat diet?
So it's going to be very individual. The studies that were, for example, for breast cancer, they saw the most benefits in terms of recurrence by reducing fat to under 30% of your total calories. So that's probably what you want to aim for. Anything less, people stopped. They left the study. They couldn't do it. So again, eating more plant-based, you're going to eat a lot of the good fats, not the saturated fats. So that's the way to go rather than, just low fat.
Okay. Someone asked, how do you feel about whey protein drinks?
They're actually very good. They're the best protein drink to have. If you don't want to have a dairy product, then there are great vegan options. There's pea protein. I don't recommend soy, not because it's dangerous, only because it's just so concentrated for the hormonal cancers. We don't have enough studies for that.
Okay. Someone else asked, what about using sugar substitutes in place of sugar?
So it has its place. There are certain sugar substitutes that may be better than others. Monk fruit, stevia are a little better, probably. Um, you know, we're just starting really to investigate whether it, disrupts the gut microbiome, whether it actually makes you crave more sugar because your body thinks it's getting sugar. So the jury's not out yet, but if you have a condition where you want to use sugar substitutes, there's definitely a place for that.
Any problems with soy products and then estrogen?
No, perfectly safe. We have 25 years of really good research. Edamame, tofu, all those things, tempeh are great protein sources. They don't advance your risk of breast cancer or ovarian cancer. And it may even be protective for women on tamoxifen. It actually helps tamoxifen work better. So don't fear the soy.
It's good to know. What about when they add soy to like products? Is that also like okay? Like,
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the soy they add is called soy lecithin. It's actually like a binder, and they strip it of phytoestrogen. So it doesn't even have that, so no worries there. Some people can't digest, certain emulsifiers well, so that's different. But in terms of soy, that's not an issue.
and then what do you think of eating vegetables only in season?
Um, that's really a nice thing to ask because if so, there's a way to do it. For example, if you go to farmers market, then you're part of the season. You can ask the farmers, what are they growing, but it's not absolutely necessary for your health. It depends on where it's coming from, and whether you want things, imported or local. But in terms of our health, we don't see a difference. It doesn't, interfere with our rhythms if we're eating something that's in season somewhere else. So I wouldn't think that you'd have to stick to that.
Okay. Is there a no oil option for the demonstration meal and moving forward in general?
Well, it depends why you want no oil. There is a vegan movement where there's no oil. It's not. There's no evidence behind it. It's actually not healthy. I know. Okay, don't throw tomatoes at me, but it's not a healthy option, and it's actually better to incorporate some oil that you can absorb nutrients. So, if you just want to not have oil, you could just use the broth for, saute the onions and garlic in broth. That's another way to do it.
Okay. And in conjunction with that, they are asking if they can get the presentation like in a PDF, if it's
Oh,
possible.
so sorry. No, I don't share the slides, but I think it'll be recorded, right? So
Yes, it is recorded. So it's on Facebook Live now, and it will be up in our video library shortly. And then any variations to newly diagnosed prostate cancer?
So what would be the exact question? Like, what would you change up if you're eating plant-based? The only thing I would change up is reducing dairy. Everything else, increasing fiber, the good fats, that is all applicable to most cancer patients. So focusing on omega-3s and getting enough selenium. So those are things I would pay attention to.
And it said, what kind of yogurt is not good for ovarian? I'm assuming ovarian cancer.
Oh, so it's more a question of the dairy in general, but apart from it is so again, it's beneficial for colorectal. We don't for other cancers, it may be a link like prostate and ovarian. For most cancers, it's neutral, meaning it doesn't hurt. Yogurt, I would suggest yogurt every day for non-ovarian and prostate cancer, but there I would reduce just the amount of dairy you're having.
And then someone else asked, what are the best oils to use when sauteing vegetables?
Well, you know what? It depends on how much heat you're using because you want a heat stable oil, right? So high heat, that could be avocado oil, that could even be olive oil. Lower heat, you could use other types of oil. So it's not really just about, it's about in context how much heat you're using, things like that. So those are, olive oil is good in any case for anything. So you can stick to that.
Okay. And then we have one last question here. And again, if you guys want to ask any more questions, we do have a few more minutes and you can enter it into the Q&A. But this one asks, do you have any research specifically for brain cancer nutrition?
Yeah, so that's the only, I think beginning research that we're seeing is the keto diet specifically for brain cancer and one type, the glioblastoma, and not for other types of cancers. So that's something, if you know a dietitian who specializes in that, that may be something to look into. It's, again, in its beginning stages, but it might be worth looking into.
Okay. Let's see, I think I have one more. If you can't eat beans, can you substitute with quinoa?
So that's a great option. Quinoa has a good amount of protein, but I'd mix it up with other things as well. I don't know if you can't eat beans because of a condition or the gas is uncomfortable. There are ways around that. But quinoa wouldn't be enough. You'd still need more sources of protein or other nutrients, but it's a good start. It's a great substitute too.
What is the problem with diet sodas?
Um, well, there's mixed research on it. It's more about the artificial sweeteners, and I don't think there's anything harmful. I just think about what could you be drinking that might, or eat, that might have a little more benefit, like just water.
Yeah.
But mixing it up with herbs and things like if you want that, those bubbles. Even things like Pellegrino has calcium in it. It's a little more expensive, but you're getting those benefits. So it's not like saying you can never have it, but just like what else could I be drinking that would have a little more benefit, if that helps.
Makes sense. And then this last question, what are your thoughts on intermittent fasting for thriving?
So it's very individual. We're not seeing, so are we talking about health or weight loss? So weight loss, we don't see any difference between any other diet. There's a high dropout rate with intermittent fasting, so that may not be for everybody. I like to see people go on a more cyclical way of eating. It doesn't have to be intermittent fasting, but it could be just spending more time not eating, extending the time like after you get up in the morning or eating earlier and stopping to eat. That may be a more durable way, and we do see a lot of health benefits just doing it that way. So it depends what your goal is. And so, like I said, with weight loss, it doesn't make a difference. Whatever, you know, there's a study that was done head to head with all the different diets, and they all actually lost very little. no matter what they were doing. So diets are not very successful in general. So
Yeah,
I'm sure you've experienced that.
definitely. Well, thank you so much, Tamar. We appreciate your time. The presentation was awesome. Everyone for joining us tonight. Tamar, I did drop in her email at the bottom, and I will again. And then this will be, this is being recorded and this on Facebook Live now, and then it will be up on our video library within the next few weeks. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and Tamar for your time. Everybody have a good evening.